Brilliant stuff. Yeah. So yeah. So the time is now, as they say. So thank you everybody for coming on early, having a bit of a chat, and just sharing some stories. So that's what it's really about. So just to introduce myself, I'm Paul. I'm the head of sales and leading sort of the growth in the training provider community in the UK at Emissio. So thank you everybody for accepting my invitations that you would received. And subsequent communications in chat, sharing some ideas, and just generally communicating and connecting as well. And really, this series of events to be run, this was quite an interesting one. This is the second year that we brought together the University of Oxford and the student consultancy team to do this benchmark report. So I'm really looking forward to that formal part of the process. But I also believe before we start that we should also look back a bit. And what I mean by that is that are we doing something that's brand new, never been done before? And not always that is the case. And I was looking back, and if you look back in the 20th century, that there's been various sort of theorists, research is done obviously in the 20th century, which is very much put it on an educational sort of standpoint. But if you look at it from my perspective, some sort of general benefits of blended learning that, has been part of that sort of prominent work, obviously by these theorists, and my apologies for the pronunciations. I've not been on a language course for many a year, but I can do a bit of holiday German. But, there's, like Piaget as one of the theorists, he was looking very much about, early sort of 19th century about active learning, the construction of knowledge, very much about the whole hands-on activities, the problem-solving exercises. Yeah, you go back to people like I always get it now. I always say it wrong. Vygotsky, I think it is. But basically, he was looking at the whole element of the role of social, like interaction, like we're doing here, collaborating in learning, and then fostering those sort of social engagements. And that sort of co-construction of learners working together, basically environments, whether that is physical or online. And you got to feel sorry for like Benjamin Bloom in some respects. His idea of the importance of like a higher order of thinking. His interpretations, and I feel sorry for Benjamin because he never talked about a pyramid, but people interpret obviously his theories and put it into a pyramid. Just to upset him, I think, in some respects. But there has been so much work and theorists obviously done that to give us a good standing and how we actually apply ourselves. But then what you look at in the industry as well is that then there could be conscious, unconscious research done by should we say, platform providers or something like that. And then they're trying to give it perhaps a skew inside of that. So I think it's really important that the work and to celebrate the work that the University of Oxford have done, and which we're going to share on this session today, to give us a bit of an insight to basically the trends of the training provider market space and what does that look like and lessons learned. So at that point, I'm going to hand it over to Jan to give you more of a structured approach, what to expect today, and obviously introduce the team that have actually put this report together. The great thing is, though, I always say that you need to take one thing away from one of these sessions, as well as a smile. So probably around about Thursday, we're going to share with you the recording of this and actually the report as well. So the job done, basically. You're going to take something away that's got some value behind it. So Jan, over to yourself, really.
Well, thank you, Paul. That was a very scientific start of this. With regards to today, yes, structure, you said. I'm going to talk about two things. One, the first question we always get is after a webinar, that's nice that you did this from Emissio, but who is Emissio? So I try to put that into my background so that I don't have to talk about it much and keep the webinar more on focus. But basically, we work with training companies, training providers, and we help them with a whole list of things you can see behind me. And that's really what we do, whether it's a platform, whether it's content, whether it's other services that make it work, that's what we do. I'll stop it right there. With regards to the team to introduce, I'd like to introduce today Kirsten Smith, wave, yay. And Fred, can you put your camera on? Give us a wave. And Anas, I haven't seen Anas, is he on? Maybe he is, I don't know. Anas is also, will be joining us. And there is a fourth member of this team. His name is Daniel. And all of them have done a superb job in working with us as this indeed second annual research, focusing on what is blended learning, what is the use of AI, and what do training providers do with measuring training impact. And those three topics we'll talk about today. So that's the report. The report, as Paul said, will be sent to you. It will also be on our website after that. So if you, for some reason, miss it, you can always find it back. There will even be an interactive tool that Daniel within the team has developed where you can nicely bite-size see some of that information as well. So I'm going to ask my first question. Let's first talk about blended learning. Blended learning. Fred, can I start with you? If you talk about blended learning, tell us a little bit about the biggest surprise maybe, or the difference, biggest difference that was found from last year.
Sure, thank you, Jan, for that introduction. So essentially, the bulk of this report is on a questionnaire which we sent out to training providers in the UK. And a similar team did a similar survey last year. Now, the first question in both of these surveys was ultimately, do you offer blended courses? And last year we found that in the results there were a few potentially confounding factors. So what is blended learning? I think kind of we all bandy that phrase about, but it means different people to different things to different people, working in different sectors, offering different training provision. So last year there were kind of significantly fewer people who said they do blended than this year. This year, we narrowed it down. We said, no maybe category, we're going to offer you a definition. So just to quickly do it, so we're all on the same page here. The question said, this survey defines blended learning as a design training delivery method in which A, instructor-led, so classroom or VILT, and B, online, non-delivery, non-live learning, non-optional elements. For clarity, blended learning includes a reduction in face-to-face contact time, but it cannot be exclusively either ends of that kind of totally face-to-face or totally online element. So we found this year that 77% of respondents said, yes, they use our definition of blended learning. Now that's quite a few more than last year, where it was only 36% who said yes, with 7% saying maybe. So as mentioned earlier, there are two kind of factors which we believe might be behind this, providing more clarity in our definition of blended learning. And secondly, it might be that it's one of these kind of post-COVID upticks where we're seeing that more and more training providers are thinking, well, there are so many others who have gone blended, there are so many positive impacts which they've seen, and the benefits which it can bring in terms of learner outcomes, instructor satisfaction, and cost and time effectiveness mean that it's just a really attractive option this year.
All right. Thank you for that. So post-COVID and cost, two things I definitely took from your answer. I'm going to go to Kirsten. Kirsten, what was this also what you found? Were there particular things in the results regarding blended learning as a topic that either surprised you or that you found were very different from what you expected or from last year?
Thanks, Jan. Yeah, so I was on the project with Fred. We were designing the questionnaire and analyzing the results. And one of the big findings is that for every metric that we asked training providers about training impact of blended learning and non-blended learning, the vast majority, and I mean like a substantial plurality, say that there is almost no measurable negative impact of going blended, but we can see a measurable negative impact of staying non-blended. So it kind of was surprising, we asked questions in both way rounds, we asked, positive and negative impact. And we saw parity there. People would say, very little negative impact, very large positive impact. We sort of asked in all different ways: cost, time, logistics, scalability, pricing strategy. We asked about instructor satisfaction, learner satisfaction, business satisfaction. We really tried to cover all bases. And the findings kind of pretty conclusively demonstrate that everyone is very satisfied with this blended learning structure, that it has all of these really noticeable, measurable effects on companies. And it was surprising in the sense that it was so definitive, because it built from last year's findings that people are satisfied with blended learning. But we really tried to drill down into every way that we could try and think of people being impacted, and it was resoundingly positive. So that was one of the findings. Yeah.
All right. Thank you for that. With regards to blended learning, I would almost say then, because last year, as you mentioned, was it 36% did blended learning in what we defined as blended learning at that point. This year, better defined, and actually 77%. And I would say Paul and I also had that experience just by talking to people. Everybody seems to be doing blended learning, or have a good reason not to do it. And usually that is business coaches, management consultants who do some training as well, but they are usually either doing less of a blend or really face-to-face alone. And I can imagine, of course, why that is. But even a lot of business coaches are now adopting the blend, I understand. Paul, what's your view?
Yeah, I mean, the other point I should think that we need to make a definition, it depends where you're starting from as well. So obviously our experience in conversations and consultancy element to it, if you have an established organization that has been very much classroom based before, and then looking at how do they transition into more of a blended approach, that there are questions and there are challenges around that, which I think we're going to explore a little bit later with obviously the instructor delivery, to make sure they feel involved in that new way of delivering. Whereas when we've started with some work with different organizations that started in COVID, they only purely looked at the online element to it, and then the different attributes behind that. So I think it's really important to perhaps differentiate where you're actually starting from and where you need to go to, because I think there are different challenges associated to that as well.
Very good. Within our audience, are there any questions from people before we move on to the next topics, which will be about training impact? But I want to give people the opportunity to ask questions as well. Nothing in the chat yet? Don't worry, you'll have plenty of opportunity to ask things about all kinds of stuff, as long as they are those three topics. Training impact. Actually, one of the things that surprised me was about training impact was that people that do blend it seem to do a bit more on training impact measurement. Kirsten, can you explain why that is?
Yep, thanks, Jan. So we think that part of the reason that blended providers measure their training impact more is because that they have to have a more designed course. You have to put quite a substantial more effort into actually creating those different segments of online and in person. It's more complex, and therefore you also want to be able to prove that this new course structure is actually going to benefit you. One of the findings in the report is that the biggest barrier to doing blended learning is upfront transition. So cost of transferring content, cost of training your instructors into the new platform. We don't see that impact is distributed long term. So it really is just this inertia period of the upfront cost of blended. And so obviously in terms of convincing companies to put in this investment, you need to be able to prove that this has a greater impact, that this will be beneficial. So we think partly it's a kind of both ways, in the sense of blended itself provides more metrics to do a better measurement of training impact, and providers and learners themselves want to see that this blended structure is more beneficial than just an instructor in a classroom based format. So it's slightly it's more of a secondary effect of blended learning itself than an intention on the blended providers, we think.
Yeah. Fred, can you tell us a little bit about is training? Is measuring training impact something that everybody does, or is it a minority?
Yeah, so I suppose I had slightly naively assumed, well, if the number one job of a training provider is to upskill people, to train them to do whatever various assets of their jobs or maybe their personal lives better, then surely everyone's measuring training impact, right? Because impact is the most important thing. But where we found that it was a majority of respondents said that they did, it's no means all who responded and said that they do kind of measure training impact routinely. We dig into this a bit more with our ROI measurements. So how many companies would provide that as kind of a matter of course, or how many only provide it if it's asked for, or not at all. And I suppose it's tricky underpinning kind of the reasons why less than I suppose I'd assumed companies provide impact. And it may be, and particularly when we did a sector breakdown, it turns out it's more the companies who specialize in delivering training over interpersonal skills. So this is often the kind of executive management or business consulting, where I suppose it's slightly more qualitative in terms of the skills which you develop over the program. However, there still were in each sector kind of a considerable number of respondents who said they did report impact. So I think it is possible to do, but some companies may just kind of need to make that adjustment. And as Kirsten was saying there, a secondary impact of blended is that it often makes it easier. You've got to design, you've got to show why blended is going to work for you. And by providing that impact or setting up that infrastructure to show how it's providing that impact.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, can I just, I see in the chats some comments on this, and that's actually very interesting. Richard, if forgive me for putting you on the spot, you put in a comment on LTEM. Could you maybe shine a light on what that is, what your experience?
Yeah, so we've moved, thank you. We're moving from the very well-established Kirkpatrick 4-level method to what seems to us to be a bit more robust. So the learning transfer evaluation model that looks at, from memory, 8 levels, ranging from were you there to did you enjoy it, right through to the impact on the business and the wider environment. So it's got quite a lot of rigor to it. Yeah, and seems very important to us.
Excellent. All right. Thank you for that. And with regards to, well, Kirkpatrick, one of the other questions was, what is the most used one? I think that in the report, it was very clear that the Happy Sheet is the most used one. So probably not a surprise to any of you. But if we go a little bit deeper, Kirsten, do you know if people go a bit deeper, what they measure according to the report results?
Thanks, Jan. So it's about just under a third, which is the largest segment, use a Happy Sheet, and lots of providers measure in multiple ways. So if we just broke it down into the largest segment, that everyone said it was Happy Sheet. But typically, if you're going to go a bit deeper, they'll either have in-depth conversations with the client, sometimes at staged intervals after the training, so a few months later, 6 months later, to see how it's impacted them. We also see ROI measurements, so return on investment measurements, and looking at actual business, what do you call them, metrics. So, profit. Is your company making more money now that you've trained all of your employees? I think something that we were aware of is that, particularly also for our respondents who said that they measured impact on the basis of test scores, in combination with a Happy Sheet, you're only looking at short-term impact. You're only looking at whether or not this training course gets your student or your learner through whatever test or hurdle it is that they need to accomplish in the next month or few weeks. And then a Happy Sheet is really, it's an immediate assessment of whether or not your learner enjoyed the course, found it interesting, thinks that they've acquired the skills, but it's not actually seeing whether they can translate that knowledge and that skill on the long term in their job or in whatever it is that they are trying to do. I can see we've got a relationship coach here, you know, whether it's that they're trying to have better social or romantic relationships. So you really need to have a combination. You really particularly need to be measuring impact over the long term to have a good assessment of the value of your training course, because otherwise you're going to be measuring things such as immediate enjoyment and the extent to which your learners just liked the course and found it interesting, rather than whether or not they're really acquiring that skill that you want them to have and they can apply it at will in situations which are challenging. So yeah, obviously the best way to look at this in terms of a business thing is to do that ROI measurement, is to look more at profit and to look more at productivity. But those are harder things to measure, particularly in terms of seeing the direct impact your training course is having on the business. So it's more of a kind of holistic assessment. But yeah, that's what I would say that the data showed.
Okay, thank you for that. With regards to the training, and I see brilliant comments in the chat again. Some people using a very in-depth method. Thank you for example, after 3 and 6 months, Andrea. There was one topic, Zoe, you mentioned the word hybrid. Can you tell me what elements hybrid maybe include?
Hi. So hybrid is just sorry, just using a mixture of all of them really. So ROI, happy sheet, a bit of everything, just
Okay,
sort of
all right.
result from everything.
Yeah. And that makes perfect sense. I do apologize for putting you on the spot, by the way.
It's okay.
Yeah, and I've just got another point as well. Also, when we're looking at the gathering feedback, also we have to think about the motivation, the people behind that, they're actually responding as well. So we've had some cases where we did some work with the royal household, and it was like, well, okay, so and the great thing was everyone on the program absolutely loved it. But when they're looking to get the constructive feedback and everything about the understanding the impact of that, they soon realized that they hadn't actually put it into management speak, because what they wanted to do next time round, they wanted to secure more funding for the training. So just having 12 guys come back from a training and they said absolutely loved it, was the best training ever. Also, when you're looking at gathering the feedback, the analysis of that is also who the target audience is going to be receiving it as well. It was quite a good lesson that we learned. And then we sort of, should we say, re-engineered the feedback at the time to make it relevant, obviously, for the target audience.
All right. Thank you for that. Again, I like the personal example there, and that's that enriches always the experiences, sharing experiences here. That's what we like to do. I want to move on to the next topic, which is are people using AI? Before I do so, I'm going to make one comment, which is Orna, you're saying that you are working on making a blended program. We're very happy to talk to you about that on experience from us on how you can set some metrics on that. So I'll leave it at that. With regards to AI, I saw that Anas has joined the call as well. Anas, you've been looking at use of AI within training providers and this as part of this research. Could you maybe tell us a little bit about your findings, and are people using AI at all? Sorry, people, I mean training providers in this case.
You're on, Anas, you're mute.
That is how to not do a Zoom call. Sorry. Thank you, Ian, and thank you everyone for joining. You know, AI has been in the news for a while. Everyone is talking about it. Everyone is interested in actually incorporating it into their business. And this is why we thought it's such an important part that we should include it in the report. Yeah. So the areas I've looked into is how AI is actually revolutionizing the education sector, whether it's personalization in terms of learning platform, whether it's using content creation, all of these stuff that a lot of training providers might actually take a long time to complete. So in the report, we have seen a number of people who, I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's only a quarter of the people who responded have used AI in their software, in their training experience.
Yeah, that's right. It's 24% report they
Yeah,
AI.
Thank you. Yeah, and of course, you have two things here. It's one of the most important things is that you have a massive potential to actually revolutionize how you actually conduct your training service, because a lot of you also have said, or a lot of respondents have said, that they spend a lot of time on content creation and on adjusting for different clients and so on. And all of these are stuff that could be solved with an AI, or could be at least done faster. So one of the benefits of AI, and we talk about a number of examples of companies that use it, and I'm going to talk about content creation for a second, because again, that's something I'm sure that a lot of you have spent a lot of time doing. The good thing about AI is that it can create a draft. Now, that draft might not be perfect, might not be what you want for your client, but the good thing is that having that initial template or draft will speed up a lot of the work you've done or you will have to do. And then following on from that, you can then have your content when you're done making it perfect for your service. Then you can adjust it using AI to other clients. So if you have a client in the US, you have a client in the UK, you have so on, you can use AI to change whether it's the language, it's written in, or you can also use it to provide examples of the US laws instead of UK laws, and so on. So the report you'll see would include a lot of benefits for the use of AI in your service. So yeah, I think, I'm sure Jan and Paul will be more than happy to help you out with it. But yeah, I think personally, this is a passion for me, of mine, but it is something that it's either that we get along with it and try and incorporate it into our business, or we will end up in a situation where others are using it and we're staying behind, or maybe our learners might not be benefiting to their highest potential. All of these stuff are benefits from the use of AI. And again, the report will include many benefits, and specific softwares and specific use for it.
Okay.
But yeah.
Thank you for that, Anas. I see that Kirsten has raised her hand.
I have. I just wanted to point out some of the report stats on AI. So basically the report says that most people aren't using AI, but of the people that are, they're using it in a very casual way. So some use, little use. But even then, we asked them for impact. What impact is AI having on your business? And there's like quite a substantial, like an interesting segment. It's still most people saying it's not having much, but there are a significant proportion who are saying it's having either a substantial impact or a vast impact on their business. So using AI in a casual, experimental, partial way is having a vast or substantial impact on your business. I think the data there shows that the potential for this to reduce the amount of time you have to use for content creation, massively increase the number of metrics you can use to learner skill acquisition, improve delivery, improve logistics. It's already showing that like it's coming in. So just in terms of like how our survey, even on the limited numbers that we have, are showing impact. It's really promising, and it's quite exciting too.
It is exciting indeed. I firmly believe that when new technologies, tools, processes, well, whatever new stuff comes along that seems to have some relevance and rigor, then you should play with it. This idea of get to know it, see if it really works for you or not, because then you can adopt it later on when it grows up, if you like. You start to learn what the good and bad parts of it are, and you can make a conscious decision of saying yay or nay. And that's really valuable, I think, for any business, because that means that's the start of innovation, isn't it? And with that, on the topic of AI, we actually feel it's going to be very significant in its impact. It's not going to go away, so it might come in different guises. Two people have raised their hand, Anas and then Tom.
Yeah. I just wanted to answer some of the questions that are in the chat. Zoe, Andrea, and Orna and Jessica. So for Zoe, yeah, I think that is a wonderful way of using it. You can, you know, whether it's time management, project management, even social media, whether you can essentially use, and can I just clarify, because this is important for the other questions as well. A lot of AI is currently used as LLM, which is large language models, and, you know, ChatGPT is one. So you can use that for social media even more. You can start asking it and telling it, for example, that, you know, this happened today. Last week there was this trend. My clients want this, want to whatever, and then, you know, give me an idea for a marketing strategy, right? And that, you know, then you can maybe even ask it more, right? You can go further and ask, give me what sort of template, what sort of website I should be targeting for my clients, because these clients are using this website, and so on. That moves me to the second question, which is translating the script for our training videos. That's wonderful. I would only slightly advise and suggest that you make sure you use the right large language model for that, because it depends on which languages it was trained on. So ChatGPT 4 is quite good. Just generally, it's been trained on a lot of, you know, parameters and tokens. But there are also another one that I'm going to put in the chat. It's called Bloom. It's another, I'll write it down in a second. Yeah, it's another large language model. It's quite good at translation because its aim is to be multilingual, whereas ChatGPT is still focusing on English. So yeah, that's something you want to be careful of. You might cut your costs. You might still want to hire a translator, but the difference would be, instead of them having to translate the entire thing, is just to proofread what the LLM has translated, and that way you cut your cost massively. Are there examples of AI being used that is, I presume a lot of it is ChatGPT? You're right. Again, ChatGPT is the only, or it's not the only, but the reason ChatGPT is so popular is that it's the first time we interact directly with an AI. We have that conversational kind of experience, whereas AI in reality has obviously many other, it's an algorithm essentially. So the adaptive learning that a lot of learning platforms have, where they adjust the content and they go back and they repeat and all of that is using those algorithms to detect where the learner is weaker, which areas and what areas need to be improved. So yes, while it's mainly ChatGPT right now, and you know, you hear about a lot, these are stuff that happen in the background that you might not notice. And the last question was, how do we avoid breaches of data? That is a big question, and a lot of people are asking that even within the sector. I think for ChatGPT, again, there is a lot going on about data regulation, but in the meantime, what you can do if you want to use it, there is an option to turn off the chat history. And if you do that, then your conversation with ChatGPT will not go to OpenAI for any kind of improvements or data analytics or whatever. That's what you can do in the meantime. if you don't trust ChatGPT or OpenAI, there are also other softwares and websites that promise more data privacy. But again, you know, that's the risk you take with trusting another company. Hope that answered all your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Anas. That's there's a lot to be learned here, and data privacy definitely a topic. Tom, you raised your hand.
Yeah, ChatGPT. I did a bit of a, as Kirsten said earlier, I'm a sort of casual user, and I was asking it some questions, and I was researching warranty and other types of things for a course I'm doing, and I'm very suspicious of it because it's coming up with a lot of generic rubbish, right? So you've got to be careful that it's not generic rubbish. The stuff that I was actually developing was far more intricate and far more knowledgeable than the chat that I was dealing with. And it was more or less something that you could pick up anywhere, rather than you going in to actually resolve something. But on the other side of it, we're using the AI now to create videos, and you can actually annotate it in such a way that you can have definition in the speech, which is really, really good, which is better than me because I'm monotone when I've been doing it, and you can really, really get it going well. But the other thing which somebody put in the chat is, and I take your warning, Anas, basically we want to convert it into different languages. Because I've had some quotes for the translation, and I'm not going to pay that much money for a translation. So hopefully we're going to test that out in the coming weeks and months. Now, once we've adapted one of our courses using the AI, we're going to change the language. Yeah, so that's what we're trying to do.
All right. Thank you. I see also in the chat, Angelina is talking about it can write ChatGPT. Of course, we're talking about Welsh and Dutch. So, Tom, for both of you, for us, it's actually relevant. With regards to AI, it clearly, if you look at the data, and the data right now is how many comments there are in the chat. AI, of the three topics that this research has been about, blended impact and AI, it's clearly the one that gets most attention. It's actually, I mean, we found the same. We've had lots of questions for a while now, and we found it so important that we're actually organizing a conference in October about how training providers can use AI. And we generally see, I would say, in training delivery, three kind of categories, if you like. To create content, and Tom mentioned earlier already that, for example, creating a video, ChatGPT can create maybe text for you, but you have to edit it, contextualize it, I think is also a good word for this, because otherwise, if everybody uses the same thing, you get this, what I would like to call the sausage machine. It gets very bland, everybody creates the same. You need to differentiate yourself. And this is also where competition comes in. When the internet came on, I bet that every training provider in this room found that they had another 100 competitors in their market. With ChatGPT or other AI tools coming on board, I bet you're going to get 1,000 extra competitors. So the need to differentiate is getting better and bigger and more important every time. So it's really important that you get to that. And I liked, we have on the call also Moira. Moira was on a previous, actually the previous webinar that we did last month. And she was talking about creating and making sure that you have your own voice, your own personality, your own character. And I really love that, that point in itself. Moira, do you use AI for creating your own character?
I'm so intrigued by the chat around this on this webinar. we work as a training provider in data and analytics. So we train people to become data analysts, data engineers. So I know AI is very much starting to embed itself in the development process and decision making in companies, but I hadn't quite grasped the connection between using it to create your content, which seems a bit strange, doesn't it, when you think about it? But absolutely, I would echo what you said. Doing something to create a bland version to stack your training material high and sell it cheap might be your strategy. But if you're wanting to keep your personality, I think be very, very clear about what your tone of voice is, what your brand is. How do you keep that interaction? Because I think that's where blended training, as we've seen in the survey, it's about establishing a relationship. And I think there's the risk there that AI could dull down your training company voice to the point that you're not being heard and the quality is not coming through.
Thank you for that. I really like that point. That was, to me, was a real important point. Keep your personality as a company, as a training provider. Kirsten, I'm going to give you you raise your hand, the last words before Paul will sign us all off.
Mm-hmm.
Mute. I just want to say a few things on AI about translation. I was reading about translation in AI recently, and basically it says that obviously it's not going to be as high quality as getting a human translator. If you're translating legal documents or you're translating technical documents, you need a human because they know about context-specific information. But it's better to have content in multiple languages than to not. And ChatGPT or other AIs, mostly other AIs, will provide you with a very rough version of whatever it is you've created in a different language, and that can attract more customers, that can be used for different audiences. So that's kind of part of it, is that it's low quality, but it's better than having nothing. The second issue that I was just thinking about, which Tom was talking about, is factual quality. I quite like this phrase that I heard, which is that AI hallucinates at you, which is that it will come up with information that is completely wrong. And being a historian, it's even, we talk about how it's wrong on contemporary information. ChatGPT is not past 2021. It's also wrong about factually historical information. I've had things come up which are literally just completely just illusions, that's not what happened. So obviously your specialist knowledge is still very important. But the third point I would make is that the AI we're seeing now is simply a representation of what is an exponential growth in what AI will be in the next 5 years. And as we all learned from COVID, exponential means grows really, really fast and scarily in some ways. But it's just to say that if you're looking at ChatGPT and its output now and you're thinking, it's okay, it's not great, in 5 years' time, it's going to be massively better. And companies, every major data, every major social media company, every major search engine is working round the clock to make a new AI that's better than their competitors. So this really is a kind of jump on quick, get in here, because it's going to just take off. And then I would say lastly, and this is about our interview that we did with a specialist in education about data protection. That is a major concern. AI will steal your data, and ChatGPT is an open AI. And so we don't know what they're doing with data. If you have sensitive information that you're providing, or particularly if you're trying to do analytics on younger learners, if you are an education provider and you're providing this to minors, big concerns around using information, say for personalization, for groups of people whose data should be quite highly protected. there are AI platforms, they're called mature tools. I'm not entirely sure on the names of them specifically, that do have data protections in place. I think you may have to pay a bit more for them, but there are people trying to create AIs that will not steal and sell your data and the data of the people that you're inputting into it. But ChatGPT is not one of those. So that's something to be aware of. And I just wanted to sort of clear up some of the questions that were going along. Thanks very much.
Well, that's lovely. And I think from my point of view, I'm conscious of time. So ChatGPT doesn't care about time, but we all have busy time. So I think the key thing from my point of view, all this conversation, is that in this room today, there is more wealth, more experience, more know-how than you ever get with GPT. GPT and these type of technologies are a tool to help us, enable us to do our job perhaps more effectively, more efficiently, but they will never be able to replace the experiences of Tom, Richard, Dave, Anas, everybody on this call. What we can do is use it as a tool to make ourselves more effective and more efficient, but never lose our personality, our quirkiness, and our personality and our brand in whatever we do. I've enjoyed the session today. We will do the follow-up as we discussed. I also want to put an open comment out there that if anyone wants to chat about this further, then I probably will try and make a series of calls. There won't be a computer behind it. It will be me on a phone, but I would love to catch up with you. If you've got any ideas, want to share more ideas with inside the community, that'd be fantastic. But please take whatever you can from this. We'll give the resources, but thank you very much. And as I can see, everyone really on the call today has probably got a good smile, if not a bit of a grimace, but I'm sure that hopefully you can take something away from it. And thank you so much for your time today. Jan, thank you so much. The team from Oxford, everybody on the call, it's been a delight. I've taken lots away from it, and I do appreciate your time, and hopefully see you same time next month, as they say. Thank you.